Modernity was presented to us as the pinnacle of human development. We are told that we are living in the best time in history, in a world where technology has eliminated many of the difficulties faced by previous generations. We can communicate instantly with anyone anywhere in the world, access unlimited information, and enjoy comforts that would have been unimaginable just a few decades ago. But despite all these advantages, something is missing. Instead of living a more fulfilling life, many people feel an indescribable emptiness. We were promised a better world, but this promise seems to have been broken somewhere. From the time we are little, we grow up with a story that society is always moving forward, that everything is constantly improving. We believe that every innovation brings us closer to a fuller, more comfortable, and more meaningful life. But this belief is almost never questioned. It is assumed that technological and economic progress directly leads to a better life. But if this were true, why do more and more people feel dissatisfied? Modernity has created a paradox. Instead of bringing us closer to happiness, it has increased the sense of alienation. The problem lies not in progress itself, but in how human life is redefined in this new order. Society has transformed life from something to live into something, to produce and consume. We are taught that the secret to happiness is to keep growing, to have more, to use time more efficiently, and to increase performance. But in blindly pursuing these ideals, we have lost sight of what really matters. The promise of progress has also sold us the illusion that it will become easier to connect. We were told that technology would bring us closer than ever, eliminate distances, and facilitate human relationships. But this has not been the reality. Our ability to communicate instantly has superficialized rather than strengthened relationships. Digital interaction has replaced real contact. Constant exposure to the lives of others has turned comparison into a harmful habit. Never before in human history has there been so much interaction, and yet the sense of loneliness is growing. Another cornerstone of this distorted understanding was the belief that knowledge would liberate us. Today, access to information is almost limitless, but instead of leading us to a deeper understanding of the world, it has led us into an ocean of distractions. We are constantly bombarded with stimuli, which fragments our attention and prevents us from stopping and thinking. Information is no longer a tool on the path to wisdom. It has become a product designed more for consumption, aimed at entertaining. Even the structure of the system has come to determine what we want and what we value. Success was equated with status. We were told that happiness could be achieved through material security, and that life should only be measured by achievements. But instead of providing fulfillment, these goals created a constant sense of inadequacy. Progress imposed a mechanistic view of existence. A person's value is now measured by their contribution to society, by how productive and useful they are. The root of the problem is that modernity has redefined the meaning of life according to the needs of the system, not human needs. Economic growth has been prioritized over personal development, entertainment over introspection, efficiency over meaning. We have been trained to pursue goals that don't actually fill the emptiness inside us. Hence the paradox of progress. We are more efficient, but not happier, more connected, but not really closer, more knowledgeable, but not wiser. This contradiction is not a coincidence or a minor flaw in the system. It is the inevitable result of a structure that prioritizes the functioning of society over individual fulfillment. Modern life has turned us into the cogs of a constantly turning machine. We are in a game whose rules have already been set, and the only option we seem to have is to stay in it, without questioning where it is going. The structure of modern life has shaped people according to how the system works. From the moment we are born, we are prepared for a role in this never-ending system, and we are taught that work is the essence of life. We are told that this is what gives meaning to our lives, but in this system, Work is often not presented as a way of personal fulfillment. On the contrary, it is presented as a necessity from which we cannot escape. It becomes a burden that drains our time, energy, and health, which determine the rhythm of life. Moreover, it offers no real reward. It is nothing more than survival. Working hours seemingly end, but in reality they don't. The mind is trapped in non-stop worries. Technologies that were supposed to make life easier have blurred the boundaries between work and private life. People are now constantly available, and this creates a mental fatigue. This fatigue is not only physical, but also mental exhaustion. Every day is like the last, and there is no room to stop or really rest. Productivity is glorified as the greatest virtue, while rest is relegated to the background. It is even seen as a waste of time. The system creates an invisible but constant pressure to be busy. Doing nothing is portrayed as an almost unforgivable sin, as if the value of our existence depends on constant production. But in this endless running, exhaustion becomes inevitable. Anxiety and stress are no longer the exception. It has become almost normal for people who have learned to measure their own worth in terms of performance. Consumption is the other leg in this equation. The system expects you not only to work, but also to spend constantly. We have been taught to find fulfillment in having things. Consuming is made to look like the path to happiness, but that happiness never really comes, because the system is based on insatiability. When you buy one product, you immediately need another. There is always a promise of fulfillment that seems attainable, but in fact, it is a mirage that gets farther and farther away with every step. Marketing techniques are so skillfully designed that most people don't even feel the need to question it. Advertisements sell dreams, not products. Consumption is paired with success, status, and a sense of belonging. Everything we buy carries the promise that our lives will be better. It offers a sense of fulfillment, but this feeling is never fully realized. The disappointment that comes after every purchase is not a mistake. It is actually a necessary part of how this system works. Endless dissatisfaction has become the fuel that turns the wheel of consumption. This system has radically changed our perception of time. People don't really live in the present anymore. They live in constant anticipation of the future. We are waiting for the next vacation, the next phone model, the next opportunity. We keep waiting for the ideal moment of life, but it never comes. The present becomes just a tool, a transition point that is supposed to carry us to that better moment in the future. But when that future arrives, it is the same as the past. We are always promised something better, but life slips away before that promise is kept. Another consequence of this system is the disconnection between us and people. Even relationships are now seen as transactions, just like in the business world. The logic of efficiency and profitability has taken over social relationships. As time has become a precious resource, people have become calculating even when sharing this resource. Conversations interrupted by constant notifications, meetings scheduled on top of each other, meetings overwhelmed by busy agendas. Deep relationships are weakened in this distracted environment. Extreme individualism is presented as some kind of ideal, but in fact it has made people lonely. Self-sufficiency has been praised so much that emotional needs are perceived as a weakness. The idea that everyone should take care of themselves has been normalized. But the truth is that human connection is a basic need, not a luxury or a surplus. The absence of meaningful relationships cannot be filled by entertainment, nor by success, nor by possessions. The end result of this system is a silent epidemic of loneliness. This loneliness is not a healthy introspection resulting from personal choice. It is a loneliness imposed by a system that fragments human relationships and turns individuals into lonely cogs. We live in crowds, but without a real sense of belonging, And the absence of those real connections creates a slight but constant restlessness inside us. It is an emptiness that we try to fill with distractions, but it is never completely filled. This scenario has reached such a point that almost no one questions it anymore. It is accepted as if no other way of life is possible, as if it is the inevitable price of progress. But underneath this seemingly normal picture, something is missing. Deep down inside, we feel that something is wrong. We know that life shouldn't feel this way, but it is difficult to voice this discomfort because the dominant narrative keeps repeating that everything is much better than before. We are told that the problem is not in the system, but in the individual's inability to adapt to it. Yet, in the midst of this world that keeps us busy and distracts us from being productive, the most fundamental question remains the same. What is it all for? Modern life, for all its material splendor and technological advances, has cut many people off from a deep connection with themselves. The alienation, emptiness, and disconnection felt in daily life are not just the imperfections of the system, but are the result of a larger problem: the disconnection with ourselves. The search for purpose, though considered one of the most fundamental priorities of human life, has melted away in a web of external expectations, imposed goals, and societal ideals. We have always been taught to look for meaning in the outside, in wealth, in accumulating success, in social recognition. But this search only leads to greater dissatisfaction, because these achievements never fill the emptiness inside us. The life we are offered, the life that is marketed to us as the most advanced, the most progressive, is in fact a hollow scaffolding. And this emptiness is only felt more clearly when we stop for a moment and think. When we ask ourselves, amidst all the noise, the question, is this really what I was looking for? Every time we get caught up in the flow of social expectations, every time we say, this is the way it's supposed to be, we get a little further away from ourselves. We console ourselves by saying, this is how the process works. Success is just around the corner. But it never comes. And worst of all, we have become accustomed to this feeling. Living in the hope that tomorrow will be better, we have normalized this gnawing anxiety. But the truth is that the future is just a reflection of today. Waking up to this emptiness is not an easy or sudden process, but rather a painful realization. Because that would mean admitting that you never actually have the answers the system promises us. The search for pleasure, comfort, and social approval becomes nothing more than a growing dissatisfaction over time. For all its material splendor and technological advances, modern life has cut many people off from a deep connection with themselves. The alienation, emptiness, and disconnection felt in daily life are not just the imperfections of the system, but are the result of a bigger problem: the disconnection with ourselves. The search for purpose, though considered one of the most fundamental priorities of human life, has melted away in a web of external expectations, imposed goals, and societal ideals. We have always been taught to look for meaning in the outside, in wealth, in accumulating success, in social recognition. But this search has only led to greater dissatisfaction, because these achievements never fill the void within us. The life we are offered, the life that is marketed to us as the most advanced, the most progressive, is actually like an empty scaffolding. And this emptiness can only be felt more clearly when we stop for a moment and think, when we ask ourselves the question amidst all the noise, is this really what I was looking for? Every time we get caught up in the flow of social expectations, every time we say, this is the way it's supposed to be, we get a little further away from ourselves. We console ourselves by saying, this is how the process works. Success is just around the corner. But that corner never comes. And worst of all, We have become accustomed to this feeling. Living in the hope that tomorrow will be better, we have normalized this gnawing anxiety. But the truth is that the future is just a reflection of today. Waking up to this emptiness is not an easy or sudden process. On the contrary, it is a painful realization. We may think that anxiety is something that only the most desperate people experience, but in fact, it is the common experience of everyone living at the very center of the modern paradigm. The question, "Is this all there is?" is an expression of a deeper longing, a longing to be real, a search for meaning, meaning that is not based on what we have or what others think of us. This emptiness is not only about a lack of personal goals, but also about a lack of connection to something bigger than us, something that transcends us. Sometimes a simple realization can change everything, a turning point that radically transforms the way we look at life. A journey where we begin to measure our worth not by what we have, but by who we are, what we give, and what we can create. The moment we begin to learn to live for ourselves, not according to the expectations of others, that is when we begin to break free from the invisible chains of the system. And therein lies the real crisis of modern society, not in the lack of progress, but in the emptiness that it often brings with it. Yes, we have made a lot of progress, we have moved fast, but this speed has distanced us from our essence, from our most basic needs. We find ourselves lost in a labyrinth where the concepts of success, consumption, and productivity are sanctified. In the end, however, these are just illusions, and as we chase after these illusions, we find ourselves in an endless cycle, a sense of fulfillment that we are always trying to reach but never quite reach.